This topic that I'm talking about today, in my opinion, is the most important, fundamental, foundational understanding that you can have, especially now, especially today, because things are rapidly happening. Things are picking up steam. When I started this channel, believe me when I say it was a long time coming. I woke up to the realities of what's going on in this world and the things that are happening in the background. Well, I woke up to that about 17 years ago now. It was around the 2009 time frame when my grandmother died. I began to seek after purpose. Like, what's this whole thing about? Why? Like, what are we here for? What's the meaning of it all? And once I started chasing that down, it would ultimately end up, a journey that I am still on today. But my eyes were opened pretty quickly once I started down that path. And it has always been my desire to scream it from the mountaintops to try and wake others up as well. But unfortunately, I kept my mouth shut. For a long time, I just kept playing the game. And I just kept it to myself for the most part. I mean, I would talk about it here and there to those who would listen, but I was often looked at googly-eyed, But I think we're in a new time now. And I think people are much more accepting of new information. And I think the realities of this place are becoming more and more evident as we go here. I don't think that it's even questionable anymore. I mean, it takes some real naivety to still believe the mainstream or what's going on out there, what you're told, the main narrative about this reality. Wow. Obviously, it's a joke. So anyway, what I wanted to say is, there's something very important though. When I created this channel, I created it with the full intent of trying to make up lost time. And, this is my proverbial way of screaming from the mountaintops, because I do live on a mountaintop. But if I go outside and start yelling this, my neighbors are going to think I'm crazy, and there's only two of them. So it's really not going to be it's not going to have that much of an impact. So this is my screaming from the mountaintops, this channel. That's what it's all about. And so this topic that I'm talking about today, in my opinion, is the most important, fundamental, foundational understanding that you can have, especially now, especially today, because things are rapidly happening. Things are picking up steam. And, there's a lot of different things that are happening right now, different events. If you're paying attention, you're seeing some things happening right now that I think is the culmination of things really approaching. And so I think that there's a few things here that I want to bring up that are so important that people understand this, that it could really be the difference between life and death. And when I say life and death, I'm talking about eternal life and death. And so it's time to wake up, because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a matter of life and death. Because the reality is, this is just as much spiritual as it is physical. And we can know this by what we see out there. Because when you peek under the surface, under the covers there, and you see that evil that's clearly there today, well, when you see that, what that's telling you is that there is also an opposing force way over here at the other end of the spectrum. And that opposing force is the complete opposite of that. It is good. It is love. It is God. Okay. And obviously that's where hope comes in. And that's where things begin to take on purpose and meaning. And so part of my purpose and where I find meaning in that purpose is in this right here, by trying to convey what's in this head of mine over the last 17 years to you, hopefully in a way that is digestible, that you can understand, and that is at least appealing enough for you to stick with me long enough to hear it. So that's my hope here. Whether or not that's landing, maybe a different story, but that's my intention. And so what I'm here to tell you today, I feel is the most important part of this, because it's what I realized pretty quickly in my journey. And it is that, I mean, that's the main thing, right? That it's a spiritual battle that we're in here, and that there's a war that's going on for your mind. Because if they can win that battle, then, they've won the spiritual battle too. And so, yeah, you better believe there's a war for your mind. And, one of the very important elements here that I think people need to understand, when you see that evil, when you peek under that cover and you see that evil there, where did it come from? What's its origins? How does it seem to be coexisting with us? These are all questions that we should be asking when we see this clear evil in our midst. And when you begin to look for the answers to those questions, what you will find is that a long time ago, and there's great debate about all of this, so I'm not going to get into all that because I really don't care. I don't think it's key to what I'm trying to do here today, and so I'm leaving it alone for the most part. But when that happened, it is important, but it's not important to this topic right now, to this conversation right now. And so whether you believe it was millions of years ago or 6,000, I don't care, and that's whatever. Okay, doesn't matter for this. But whenever it was that this happened, it happened. It for sure happened. And what that was that there was an evil force that was never intended to be present amongst humanity. But at some point, it became present. And I'm submitting to you that it did long ago at Mount Hermon. Now, if you're not familiar with Mount Hermon, like all these, popular sites, it's in the Middle East, clearly, in this key part of the Middle East here. And, it was on that mountain that the Watchers came. And what they did when they came would change the direction and the future of humanity forever. Because what they brought with them was knowledge that was never intended for us to have. And it wasn't that we were supposed to be robots or, stupid. No, it's just that this knowledge, it was a knowledge that had been polluted. It was a knowledge that had been corrupted. It was a knowledge that was going to be ultimately used for evil purposes. And so any knowledge, when you put that intention behind it, well, the outcome's never going to be good. But that doesn't make knowledge in itself evil, right? It was the intention that was behind it. And the intention that was behind it was to corrupt humanity. And that it did. Because there was 200 watchers, we're told in the book of Enoch, that fell onto the Mount Hermon. And it was there that they made a pact with each other. And that pact was to come out amongst humanity and to bring them this knowledge in exchange for procreating with this humanity. And that was obviously never intended to happen by the creator of all things. Not at all. It was a great sin, and one that would taint the genetic, gene pool forever. I mean, I think we're clearly still dealing with it here today. You can see residual effects of it even still today. And it was through that and that transfer of this knowledge with the evil intentions that was behind it that ultimately led to corruption like had never been on the face of the earth before. And that ultimately is what, when you peek under that curtain, that's what you're seeing even still today. The remnants of that evil from way back then, because it's always been in the midst. And unfortunately, it's the people in control, the ones that have maintained control and power. It's through them that this thing continues to perpetuate. And it's through them that it resides. And it's through their rituals and these nasty things that they do that it still garnishes power today. But if you read in Enoch, you'll see that each one of these watchers had different, different categories of teaching that it would ultimately give to mankind. And it was through that the innocence of the intent for humanity that was initially what God intended for humanity. It was through that innocence was shattered. It was the destruction of innocence, and it's never been the same since. And so that's, where we get these stories from that we're told today are myth, right? Because you're taught that, all those Greek gods, all those myths, we're talked about them in the storybook, or we're taught about them in the storybooks as if they're myths, but no, they're not myths. This is real. That's real. It's reality. You look around at a lot of these ancient sites and what you'll see is architecture that can't be explained by modern science and mainstream archaeology. And, they try to control the information. They try and, make it sound rational, all their ideas behind how it was done and these concepts of, moving massive stones and, it was just with pulleys and millions of slaves. Okay. No, it was giants, actually. Giants and, supernatural beings. I mean, that's all it takes to explain that away. There, done. But they'll never go there. They'll never allow that train of thought to become mainstream because they have to keep that on the down low. Otherwise, it exposes all these other things going on. But that's what happened, right? Because when these watchers, when these fallen angels mixed with humanity, mixed with the daughters of men, well, what would become their offspring were these giants and these Nephilim is what the Bible calls them. These are the fallen ones. There's no redemption for these beings because they weren't created by God. They were created outside of God's creation. It was never intended to be. So this was a great sin, once again. This was a sin against God and a sin against humanity. And it's interesting because a lot of people, they're like, oh, that Old Testament God, he's such a mean old God. There's no way, that Old Testament's all done away with because that was a different mean old God. Jesus brought a new, all that comes from people being ignorant to this concept, to this fact that what God was dealing with back then was a tainted gene pool now. And if he didn't do something to correct it, to fix it immediately, in itself, it would have ended humanity. And so he had to react. And we think, oh, the flood, that's a mean old God who sent that flood. Why would he send Noah's flood? I don't want to serve a God that sends floods and kills people for doing bad things. Ignorance. Pure ignorance. That's what this is. Because he wasn't just killing people for doing bad things. He was eliminating this tainted gene pool. Because if it was allowed to continue to perpetuate, there wouldn't be pure humanity left. And so that's what happened. The great flood took place. But even through that, this evil still was able to rear its ugly head on the other side of it. And there's great debate on, how that happened. And again, that's not what I'm here to talk about today. Don't care. The point is it happened. And so it was also present after the flood. So it survived in one form or another. It's still there. And we are still dealing with that same evil here today. Okay? Because the ones that did die in that flood, well, their spirits, because they were not created by God, what do you do with that? He never intended to deal with those spirits. And so they're wandering spirits. They're spirits that roam the earth with no place to go because they weren't part of creation. They were never intended to be. And so these wandering spirits, they are the evil demons and, the supernatural evil things that are a part of this world. That's what that is. And so that's why we see a lot of that, supernatural evil stuff going on today. It's attributed to this. So see, it all goes back to this. It all goes back to that event. It all goes back to that mountain. And it's pretty interesting that on that mountain, you know what you'll find today? A United Nations compound. United Nations set up shop on top of that mountain. Don't you think that's interesting? And you know what's at the base of it? The gates of hell. The grotto of Pan. That's what's at the base of it. So as you can see, this is a pretty important area here. Why the United Nations is involved in it, I don't know. I'll let you be the judge on that. But obviously they have some interest in it. Seems pretty interesting to me. But anyway, yeah, and now I feel like for a very long time, these power structures have been trying to maintain this control without a knowledge of these historical facts. We're taught in school all these things are myth, we're taught in school all these historical lies, we're taught in school all these falsehoods because they clearly don't want us to be empowered by the truth, because the truth will set you free. The truth is power. Knowledge is power. Oh, they know it. They want to keep it to themselves. But that knowledge is breaking free today. A lot of people know what I'm saying. I'm saying this for those who've never heard it. I know there's, this isn't news to anybody that's been in this game for a long time. I get it. But there's still people out there waking up every day. And maybe they'll be the ones. Maybe you're that person that stumbles on this video. That's my hope. If you already know all this, stick around. Maybe you'll hear something you don't know. But this is for those who don't, because this is so important that you understand this. Because that evil that's under that cover that you see there today, this is its origins. This is where it comes from. These sacred sciences, they were controlled and taught to the elite by secret societies for a long time. It still happens today. It was never intended for us peons to know, the peasants, the slaves. Well, we may not know all of it, but we get the gist. And that's all you need. That's all you need to know and expose that evil for what it is. And it's so important today that we get this, because if you haven't heard, there's a great disclosure coming here about UFOs.
As you remember, I recently directed the Secretary of War. How good is Pete Hegseth doing, by the way? to begin releasing government files relating to UFOs and unexplained aerial phenomena.
And that disclosure, although they say it's UAPs or whatever they call it now today, UFOs, that term got wore out and they didn't like where that went. So now they just rename it UAPs and try and associate something else with it. But it's all the same. It's all the same phenomena. It's this supernatural stuff. These things aren't extraterrestrial. They're interdimensional. They've been here all along. And so do not fall for this, because there is deception coming. You can be sure of that. Yeshua tells us, I don't know how many times in the Bible, do not be deceived, do not be deceived, do not be deceived. I mean, he's constantly saying, do not be deceived. I think if you're a believer, a follower of Yeshua, then I think you should heed those warnings. Sounds like he was pretty serious about it, as many times as he said it. And so we need to understand these things, guys. We cannot just be fools. That's what they want. We need to wake up to these things. But there is a great deception coming, and that great deception, I think, lies in that disclosure. Because once that breaks out on the earth, well, then what we're looking at is the same thing that happened back then. And there is going to be a great deception that comes along with it. And so everybody needs to know this. It's fundamental. It's fundamental, foundational to understanding, this reality, that this is what we're dealing with. And when that breaks onto the scene, you need to know what it is. And it is not coming from Zeta Articuli or some other crazy place, out in the star systems. No, it's been here all along. It's interdimensional. What we're dealing here with is dimensional entities. That's why, over in CERN, they're playing around, smashing particles together, opening up portals, Yeah. Interdimensional. Trying to open up that bottomless pit so they can release Apollyon, Apollo, that mythical figure. Yeah. That's who they serve. And, there's so much I could say in relationship to that topic, but that's what you need to know. That if and when that happens and you are told that this new thing is happening on the earth, when this great disclosure comes, because we're being told it's coming. And there's been soft disclosure all along the way, if you've had eyes to see. Well, there is coming a big disclosure. And when it does, it is a big deception. And you need to know who it is that they're presenting to you, what it is. It's evil. Now, I will say we need to keep in mind that there is also, good entities that are also interdimensional, right? Angels and, God, Yeshua, these are all things that also reside in these other dimensions. And so it could not be evil, it just, I guess we need to have our thinking caps on when they begin to speak, because it's going to be in their message that we will know them. By their fruit, you will know them. By the things that they're jabbering whenever that takes place, whatever they're saying. If it's contrary to the word of God, if it's contrary to the law of God, it is Antichrist. Okay. And so we just need to be prepared for this, and we need to understand who these things are, what these things are. I'm telling you, that's what we're going to be dealing with in the very near future. And like this thing here with these 12, last I heard, it was 12 scientists. Maybe you aren't familiar with it, but check this out.
Missing scientists with access to classified stuff, nuclear material, aerospace. They've all gone missing or turned up dead in the last couple months. Based on what you've been briefed, what do you think is happening here? And do you think that this is connected or totally random?
Well, I hope it's random, but we're going to know in the next week and a half. I just left the meeting on that subject. So pretty serious stuff. But we're going to be hopefully, I don't know, coincidence, if you whatever you want to call it. But some of them were very important people, and we're going to look at it over the next short
A lot of different research and investigations going on into that. Very interesting how, they're all connected and it's all in relationship to this topic. So that's why, in my opinion, this is all culmination towards this event, this thing that's going to happen here. I think within this presidency, because he's the one that said disclosure's coming. Now, it was interestingly timed. It could have been a distraction from what was actually happening at the time, if you're familiar with it. Or it could happen. It could come. And if it does, this is what's up. This is what's up. This is the most important thing that you can know, in my opinion. In all of conspiracy land, this is the thing that matters most, that you get this topic here right. So hopefully, I know it was there's way higher level breakdowns of this, and, great. I'm not prepared for that. That's not my mission here right now. I have a lot of things to say. So I just do this on a whim, but this is, in my opinion, the most important thing. This is the foundation of my own spiritual journey. This is how I woke up. This is what I woke up to. And so I think it's instrumental in opening other people's eyes as well. And that's, again, what this channel is setting out to do. And, I'm new to the game. I do plan on getting better as we go here, but I'm also trying to run another channel, and, that this is my business here, and, I'm learning as I go. So this is what's up. But anyway, I just really wanted to get that information out because I think it's the most important thing here. And I want to make sure that I said it soon, because you never know. It could be right around the corner. So anyway, this is Thumper. Sorry about your toes if we stepped on them. If you haven't yet, subscribe. See you in the next one.